We're going to hear from another one of our members, a guy that I've known for a while, Mike Sackett. If I had to use a word to describe Mike's life, it would be consistent. There was a book a long time ago called A Long Obedience in the Same Direction, and that's kind of something that describes his life. He's been at Sackett Financial Group, his company, for 35 years almost. They do accounting, payroll, and financial services. 2 older sons. He attends EV Free in Fullerton, Orange County, California. He enjoys photography, reading, and cooking. He's one of you, one of us, one of our members. Welcome with me, Mike Sackett.
When Chris called me a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, asking me if I'd like to speak, and he asked me a couple of questions about if I'm all in or not. You know, it's a tough concept. Is what is all in? It may be a little different to each person, but to me, it means commitment. It means really aligning with common goals. It really means working together to accomplish something fantastic. It's kind of synergistic, if you will. I think there's kind of 2 environments for the Christian. In this kind of environment, it's really easy to be all in. We're all like-minded. At church, it's easy. We all speak Christian talk. Even at our convened forums, we're all on our Christian best behavior. My office, we host our group 6, every month. We also host a couple of others during the month. But one of the things that really concerns me is that at the end of the day, after all the meetings have done, we've prayed for each other, we've shared issues, and everybody has left, leaving Jeff Abbott to kind of clean up and do his stuff. At the end of the time, what I have really been thinking about is, what do I look like to my staff? Am I still all in? Do they still see a Christian businessman? Or when all that Christian influence leaves the office, does my all-inness leave with it? I hope not. As Greg said, my business is to provide accounting, payroll, tax, wealth management, basically all things financial, predominantly to small family-owned businesses, closely held corporations, and we do a lot of executives too on the wealth management side. And we have a very, very diverse group of people. They're predominantly like me. I mean, most of my clients have been growing old with me. I'm 60. Been doing work for a lot of them for a lot of years, started in 1980. And as we've grown, we've added more and more people. We're now up to 19, which for a small local firm is actually pretty good size. And one thing I want to make sure that I do day in and day out is to be a consistent example of what a Christian leader, a Christian businessman, just a Christian person is. Because we have a very diverse staff. 2 years ago, I had a gentleman come into my office. He's my accounting and tax manager. And he came in and asked me, I was busy working, he said, "Do you have a couple minutes? I want to ask you a question." I said, "Sure." He then does the dreaded thing and closes the door, which usually means this is going to be a very serious, maybe painful meeting. So he said, "I only have one question." And he said, "Can you explain the source of your faith?" That's kind of a different question. Never been asked that before. 34 years of business, I thought I'd heard everything, but I hadn't heard that. And I said, "Well, explain, what is it you mean? What are you looking for?" And he says, "I've been here for 2 years, and I've worked for a lot of different people, but I've never worked for anybody like you before." And I explain what you mean. I don't understand. And he said, "Well, you rarely get mad. You always are teaching. You're always encouraging. You take things as mistakes as learning opportunities. And for every little win we get, you seem like you're celebrating. He says, it's just an encouraging place to work, and I appreciate it, and I think that comes from your faith. But I just don't understand, what is it that sustains that? Good question. So I sat down there for a second. I wanted to think about it carefully because I'd never been asked that question, in spite of the fact that I think each one of us in this room should be prepared for that. I wasn't. And I thought about it and said, well, his name is Braid, different name. And Braid, I said, I think there's two things really at the heart of it. One is that I believe that God has a plan for my life. Number two is I think he fulfills that plan through providing a series of miracles. He kind of winces at that one and says, do you believe that God does miracles in your life? I said, yeah, I do. Let me give you some examples. So I told Braid that over the years, right from the beginning, God had been working in my life, doing things that were unusual. And I told him I defined miracles as solutions to problems or the providing of opportunities that I didn't think I needed, or that the solutions were completely from something unexpected, that I never saw it coming, and it just plopped into my lap. Whatever, it was a blessing. And I didn't see it coming. So I told him that right from the beginning. In 1980, I started in business, and a week after we opened up our practice, got invited to a CBMC meeting. At that meeting, didn't know a soul there. And I met a guy named Kermit Sutherland. Kermit is still a friend, and has been a big part of my life. At that meeting, for the first time in my life, I heard a businessman give his testimony, talking about a personal relationship with Jesus that I'd never heard before. I was a good person, went to church as a kid, kind of fell away in college, heard all the reasons why it was a myth. But I wasn't in trouble or anything like that. I was a pretty compliant guy by nature. But I got invited back, and I went back the next week, and I heard another talk, and then another, and another, and another. 6 weeks after that, I got on my knees and asked Jesus into my heart and committed my life. It was a life changer. It's interesting that I told Kermit, my new friend, who wouldn't leave me alone, I told him about what I'd done. And he said, that is fantastic. It's a word he uses a lot, fantastic. He says, I got to introduce you to my friend. His name's Bob Underwood. He introduced me to Bob a couple of weeks later, and Bob committed to take me through Operation Timothy, which is a navigator's program of discipleship. We spent every Wednesday for lunch together for a year. A couple of years later, he introduced me to his son-in-law, Scott Keithan, who many of you know in this room here. Scott became a client, became a friend, confidant, today one of my very best friends. 2004, Scott called me and said, hey, I'm joining a group I think you'd like. It's called BBL, now Convene. I want you to talk to a guy, Jeff Abbott, who's starting a group also. And I think you had to explore it for yourself. So I met with Jeff. And it's funny because I had met Jeff several years before. He was a coach for one of my son's baseball teams, although I didn't really know him on that team. I used to see him regularly. And I knew everybody spoke highly of Jeff as a man of character, a godly man. And so, and he exhibited himself that way on the field. But Jeff introduced me to this concept of Convene, in which I joined in May 2004. And between Kermit, Bob, Scott, Jeff, and Convene, it's changed my life. Changed my life forever. Never be the same as it was. And I'm forever grateful to these men and their commitment to me, because it's just been an unbelievable journey. There's been a couple of other things, miracles that God produced. In deep recessions of 1983 and 2001, when we were a struggling business, He delivered some new business opportunities that really helped keep us going. As a matter of fact, the one we got in 2001 changed our business forever. Tripled our size of our company. It was unbelievable. Again, these things came out of phone calls from people that I either didn't know or barely knew, and changed our lives. In 2010, I was looking for somebody else to help us grow our business. We were growing. We were trying to flourish. I'm digging into Convene, trying to work on my business, not in the business, all that good stuff. So I meet with my Convene group, who gives me some counsel on what to do, and I write up my profile of this position that I'm thinking of. Jeff comes in and reads through it and says, well, that's pretty good, Mike. So let me get this right. You want to still keep doing everything just the way you've always been doing it. You don't want to change. You just want to do all the heavy lifting. No. He goes, well, then this is not the right guy. So he helps me rewrite the ad. We ended up doing a search. Scott Keithan's company helped us find Braid, who I'm talking to now in front of me. 2 years later. It's 2 years ago. And he was perfect in every way. I asked him a question off his resume. I said, it says here you speak fluent Japanese. How's that? He says, well, as you know, I was born in Utah. I'm born in a Mormon family, and I did my 2-year mission there, and that's how I learned it. So I said, shoot, is this the perfect fit? Is this going to be good for him and good for us? I really had to pray about it. Every way he seemed to fit, I just had to pray about that one. Then I thought, you know what? God's got a plan. God's got a plan for me. Maybe he has a plan for Braid. I don't know. But we hired him. So I told Braid at that time, I said, Braid, in my life, I think you're part of the miracles. He said, I'm a miracle to you? I said, you've changed my life. You've made my life better. You've allowed our company to transition and to grow. You've allowed me to grow. You've allowed me to relax. You're giving me my life, because I'd been so stressed out. And he said, wow, I'm just stunned. He says, well, I got to tell you something. I'm really questioning my faith. And I wanted to hear what was behind yours. And I appreciate you telling me. That was on a Thursday. The following Monday, he came in and told me, yesterday was the first day of my life I went to a Christian church. And I met with the pastor afterwards and asked him to explain things to him, and he did. And every week thereafter, for 8 weeks, he went to a different church and met with 8 different pastors. And about 45 days later after that, he came into my office and said, I resigned from the Mormon church. I'm now a born-again Christian. I've committed my life. So the question arises, I started was, am I all in or not? I hope so. I'm trying to be consistent. I try to be a good disciple, a good ambassador for Christ. I try to be as good in my non-Christian circles as I am in my Christian circles. Don't know if I'm always am, but I'm trying. But I do know this, Convene has been a huge part of my growth as a person. Really helped me grow. I can't thank Jeff and the guys enough. The Convene experience has changed my marriage, our business, my life, and Braid's life too. Thanks.